I was outside splitting firewood when I saw Patricia Miller's silver Lexus crawling up my driveway, and I knew my peaceful mountain morning was about to turn into something far less pleasant. The November air was crisp in northern Montana, specifically in the small community of Pine Ridge just outside Whitefish. I'd moved here 3 years ago, buying a beautiful property at the end of a private road that wound through dense forest. The house came with 5 acres, a massive stone fireplace, and most importantly, the kind of privacy that makes you forget the rest of the world exists. My name is Trevor Bannister, and I'd spent the better part of my adult life working construction in Seattle, before cashing out and moving somewhere I could actually breathe. Patricia stepped out of her car wearing what looked like a designer snow jacket that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. She was in her mid-50s, with that particular shade of blonde that comes from expensive salons, and an expression that suggested she'd been practicing her disapproving look in the mirror. "Mr. Bannister," she called out, her breath creating small clouds in the cold air. "We need to talk." I set down my axe and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Morning, Patricia. What can I do for you?" She pulled out a folder from her car, the kind of official-looking document holder that immediately puts you on edge. "I'm here in my capacity as the president of the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association. We've received multiple complaints about smoke coming from your property." I looked back at my house, where a thin stream of white smoke was rising from the chimney. "That's wood smoke, from my fireplace. You know, the one that was here when I bought the place." "Yes. Well," Patricia said, flipping through papers in her folder like she was about to present evidence in a murder trial. "The HOA has recently updated our community guidelines. Section 12. Subsection 4 now prohibits the burning of wood in residential fireplaces between the months of October and April." I stared at her for a long moment, waiting for the punchline. "You're joking." "I most certainly am not. The smoke creates air quality issues for our community members. Several residents have complained about the smell and potential health hazards." "Patricia, we live in Montana. It's going to hit 20 below zero next month. What exactly do you expect me to heat my house with?" She gave me a tight smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "There are plenty of modern heating alternatives. Electric heat, propane, natural gas. The regulations clearly state that wood-burning fireplaces are now considered a nuisance and a violation of community standards." I felt my jaw tighten. I wasn't part of any HOA when I bought this place. My deed doesn't mention anything about an HOA. "Actually," Patricia said, her smile growing wider, "if you check your closing documents, you'll find that all properties along Pine Ridge Road are subject to HOA regulations as of 2019. The previous owner was a member, and that membership transfers with the property. It's all perfectly legal. My husband is a real estate attorney, so I'm quite familiar with property law." "Then, why am I just hearing about this now?" "We've been somewhat lenient with enforcement, but the board voted unanimously last month to take a stronger stance on quality of life issues. You have 72 hours to cease all wood-burning activities, or you'll face a fine of $500 per day." She handed me a formal notice from her folder, turned on her heel, and walked back to her Lexus without waiting for a response. I stood there in the cold, watching her drive away, the official HOA letterhead practically mocking me from the page. That evening, I dug through all my closing documents, searching for any mention of an HOA. Sure enough, buried in page 47 of the property disclosure was a single paragraph mentioning the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association. I'd missed it completely. The document stated that the HOA was formed in 2019 by a majority vote of property owners along the private road, which consisted of 8 houses total. Mine was the last house at the end, sitting on the highest elevation with the best views. I called my real estate agent, a guy named Dennis who'd seemed trustworthy during the buying process. "Trevor, hey, how's the house treating you?" Dennis sounded cheerful, which meant he didn't know why I was calling. "Did you know about the HOA when you sold me this property?" There was a pause. "It was in the disclosures." "That's not what I asked. Did you know?" "Look, man, the HOA was pretty inactive back then. Just a few neighbors getting together to maintain the road. Nobody thought it was a big deal." "Well, it's a big deal now. They're trying to fine me for using my fireplace." Dennis let out a low whistle. "That's Patricia Miller for you. She moved in about 6 months after you did, bought the second house from the main road. Since then, she's turned the HOA into her personal fiefdom. I've heard stories from other clients in Pine Ridge." "What kind of stories?" "Fines for leaving trash cans visible from the road. Complaints about garden gnomes being against community aesthetics. She made the Hendersons paint their house because the blue wasn't on the approved color list. The board just rubber stamps whatever she wants." After hanging up with Dennis, I spent the next hour reading through the HOA bylaws on their website. It was worse than I thought. Patricia and her board had passed dozens of new regulations over the past year. No recreational vehicles visible from the road. No clotheslines. No vegetable gardens in front yards. And buried in the environmental section was the new rule about wood smoke. The thing that really got me was the enforcement mechanism. The bylaws stated that the HOA had the right to place a lien on any property with unpaid fines. If the fines went unpaid for more than 6 months, they could actually force a sale of the property. I looked out my window at the forest surrounding my house. This was supposed to be my escape from exactly this kind of nonsense. I'd left Seattle specifically to get away from people telling me what I could and could not do on my own property. The temperature dropped that night, hitting the low 20s. I kept my fireplace going, watching the flames dance while I considered my options. I could fight the HOA in court, but that would cost thousands in legal fees with no guarantee of success. I could comply and install electric heating, which would also cost thousands and turn my electricity bill into a mortgage payment. Or I could just pay the fines and continue burning wood, but at $500 a day, I'd be bankrupt in a month. None of those options seemed acceptable. It snowed that night, a heavy wet snow that dropped about 8 inches across the mountain. I woke up at 5 in the morning like I always did, made coffee, and looked out at my driveway. The snow had drifted against my truck, and the private road that connected all 8 houses was completely covered. That's when I remembered something important. Pine Ridge Road wasn't maintained by the county. It was private property, technically owned collectively by all the homeowners. And for the past 3 years, I'd been the one plowing it. When I'd first moved in, I'd quickly realized that the county snowplows didn't come up this far. The previous owner had a plow attachment for his truck, and he'd apparently maintained the road for all the neighbors. When he moved, he took the plow with him. That first winter, we'd had a heavy snowstorm, and everyone got snowed in for 3 days until the snow melted enough to drive through. I'd gone out and bought a heavy-duty plow attachment for my Ford F-250. Cost me about $4,000, but it was worth it to maintain access to my property. Since then, whenever it snowed, I'd plow the entire road, all the way from the county highway up to my house. It took about 2 hours each time, and I'd done it dozens of times over the past 3 winters. The 7 other houses depended on me for winter access. Patricia Miller's house was the second from the bottom, meaning she had the longest driveway to reach the county road. Without the private road plowed, none of the upper 6 houses could get in or out during snow. I sipped my coffee and watched the snow continue to fall. Then I walked to my fireplace and added another log. By mid-morning, my phone started ringing. The first call was from Robert Chen, who lived in the 4th house up. "Hey Trevor, I saw it dumped snow last night. You planning to plow soon? I've got to get to work by noon." "Not sure yet, Robert. Dealing with some HOA issues at the moment." "Oh, well, let me know. I really need to get down the mountain." The second call was from Jennifer Walsh, 3rd house from the top. "Trevor, hi. Any chance you can plow today? I've got a doctor's appointment in Whitefish at 2. "Probably not today, Jennifer. My truck's having some issues." By afternoon, the calls had stopped, and I could see why. Looking through my binoculars, I watched as several of my neighbors attempted to drive through the deep snow. Robert made it about 50 feet before his Honda Civic bottomed out and got stuck. Another neighbor tried with his SUV and managed maybe 100 yards before the snow became too deep. The calls resumed, but this time they were more urgent. Robert wanted to know if I could pull his car out. Jennifer was going to miss her appointment. Mark Peterson from house number 5 was supposed to pick up his kids from school and needed help. I helped them. I wasn't a monster. I pulled out Robert's car, gave Jennifer a ride down to the county road where she'd parked a second vehicle, and made sure Mark could get to his kids. But I didn't plow the road. The next morning brought another 4 inches of snow. My phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Patricia. "Mr. Bannister, we have a serious problem. The road is impassable." "That's correct." "Well, aren't you going to do something about it? You always plow the road." "I've decided not to this winter. I'm dealing with some financial difficulties. Patricia, can't afford the fuel and maintenance on the plow anymore." There was a sharp intake of breath. "This is completely unacceptable. The HOA expects all members to contribute to community maintenance." "Interesting. Where in the bylaws does it say that I'm required to plow the road?" Silence. "I've read through all the regulations, Patricia. There's nothing in there about snow removal. I've been doing it out of the goodness of my heart for 3 years. But with these new HOA fines, I simply can't afford it anymore. $500 a day really cuts into the budget. You're doing this on purpose. This is retaliation." "I'm just following the HOA rules, same as you're asking me to do. Speaking of which, my fireplace is going strong." The fine notice said 72 hours, and that time is up. "I assume you'll be sending the fine notice soon." Patricia hung up without responding. The road situation got worse over the next few days. Montana winter weather is unpredictable, and we got hit with a series of storms that dropped nearly 2 feet of snow over 4 days. The county road was maintained regularly, but Pine Ridge Road became increasingly impassable. The snow packed down where people attempted to drive through it, creating an icy, rutted mess that was worse than fresh powder. My house, being at the top of the hill, was fine. I had a long driveway, but I kept it plowed for my own use. I could get in and out whenever I wanted. The other 7 houses were trapped. I started receiving visits from neighbors who hiked up through the snow to talk to me. Mark Peterson was the first to make the trek, showing up on my doorstep red-faced and out of breath. "Trevor, please, man. I've got to get to work. I'm burning through my vacation days just because I can't get down the mountain." "That's rough, Mark. Have you talked to the HOA about arranging snow removal?" "I brought it up at the last meeting, but Patricia said it wasn't in the budget. Said that snow removal was the responsibility of individual property owners." "Well, there you go. I'm taking responsibility for my property. My driveway is plowed. Come on, don't be like this. What's this really about?" I gestured for him to come inside, where my fireplace was burning hot and keeping the house comfortable. Patricia is fining me $500 a day for heating my house, Mark. She's threatening to put a lien on my property. At that rate, I'll lose everything by spring. Mark's expression shifted from frustration to understanding. I didn't know about that. That's insane. Take it up with your HOA president. Jennifer Walsh came by later that same day. She was more sympathetic, having heard about the fireplace situation from Mark. Trevor, I voted against that wood smoke rule. I thought it was ridiculous, but Patricia had 3 other board members who supported her and they pushed it through. Who else is on the board? There's Sharon Kimball. She lives in house number 3. Richard Dorsey in house 7. And Patricia's best friend Linda Wu in house 4. The 4 of them vote together on everything. So let me get this straight. Patricia moved in, stacked the HOA board with her friends, and now they're running roughshod over everyone else. Jennifer nodded. Pretty much. Most of us didn't even care about the HOA until she took over. We elected her president thinking she'd just handle basic stuff, but she's turned into a tyrant. Then remove her. It's not that easy. The bylaws require a 2/3 vote of all homeowners to remove a board member, and she's got her allies. Plus, most people don't want to deal with the drama. I added another log to my fire. Well, maybe it's time people started dealing with the drama. Because I'm not plowing that road until the HOA backs off on the fireplace fine. Word spread quickly among the neighbors. By the end of the week, the situation had created a clear divide. Patricia and her board allies were on one side, furious that I wasn't maintaining the road. The other 4 homeowners were caught in the middle, frustrated but starting to understand that Patricia's aggressive HOA policies had created this mess. The first fine notice arrived in my mailbox 8 days after Patricia's initial visit. $500 for November 15th through November 21st, $3,500 total. The letter was printed on official HOA letterhead and threatened legal action if I didn't pay within 30 days. I photographed the notice and posted it on the Pine Ridge private Facebook group, along with a simple message. This is why I can't afford to plow anymore. The comment section exploded. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to started chiming in about Patricia's other fines and complaints. Someone shared a spreadsheet showing that the HOA had collected over $30,000 in fines over the past year, all going into an account that Patricia controlled with minimal oversight. Robert Chen posted, "We didn't even have an HOA fee until Patricia became president. Now we're paying $300 a month and getting nothing for it except harassment." Sharon Kimball, one of Patricia's board allies, tried to defend the fines. The rules exist for everyone's benefit. If people would just follow the guidelines, there wouldn't be any problems. Mark Peterson responded, "The guidelines are the problem, Sharon. Nobody else cares about wood smoke or trash can visibility. This is Patricia's personal crusade, and Trevor is paying the price." The Facebook argument raged for 2 days. Meanwhile, the snow kept falling. The forecast called for a major storm system moving in from Canada, potentially dropping another foot of snow. Weather in northern Montana can be brutal, and this was shaping up to be one of the heavier winters in recent years. Patricia called an emergency HOA meeting, which was announced with only 48 hours' notice. According to the bylaws, that wasn't enough time, but she scheduled it anyway. The meeting was set for Saturday afternoon at her house, which created an immediate problem. Most of the neighbors couldn't reach her house because of the snow. I received a personal phone call from Patricia on Friday evening. "You need to plow the road before tomorrow's meeting. This is official HOA business." "Sorry, Patricia. Like I said, can't afford it anymore." I could have you arrested for obstruction. The road is shared property and you're preventing access. Actually, you can't. I checked with a lawyer. The road is collectively owned, but there's no legal requirement for me to maintain it. I've been providing a voluntary service. I'm voluntarily stopping that service. This is extortion. No, this is economics. I can't afford a $500 a day fine and also maintain a private road for 8 houses. Something had to give. Patricia's voice turned icy. You haven't heard the last of this, Mr. Bannister. The emergency meeting happened anyway, though only 5 people could attend. Patricia, her 3 board allies, and surprisingly, Robert Chen, who cross-country skied down the mountain just so he could voice his opposition. He recorded the whole meeting on his phone and posted it to Facebook later that night. The video showed Patricia in her element, sitting at her dining room table with printed agendas and a gavel, like she was running a congressional hearing instead of a neighborhood meeting. This emergency session has been called to address the ongoing road maintenance crisis, Patricia announced. Due to Trevor Bannister's refusal to perform basic community service, all upper residences have been effectively blocked from county road access. Robert, still in his ski gear, interrupted. Maybe we should talk about why Trevor stopped plowing. You know, the $3,000 fine for using his fireplace. That's a separate issue, Linda Wu said. She was a thin woman in her early 40s who seemed to mirror Patricia's expressions perfectly. The fine is valid under HOA regulations. The road maintenance is a safety issue. They're not separate, Robert argued. You're bankrupting the guy and then expecting him to provide free snow removal services. How does that make any sense? Richard Dorsey, the 3rd board member, cleared his throat. He was an older man, probably pushing 70, with the look of someone who just went along with whatever was easiest. The board has discussed hiring a professional snow removal service. The cost would be approximately $800 per storm to be split among all homeowners. So $100 per house every time it snows, Robert laughed. That's ridiculous. Trevor's been doing it for free. Trevor has forfeited his right to goodwill through his current actions, Patricia said coldly. The board motions to approve the professional service and assess fees accordingly. All in favor. Patricia, Linda, Sharon, and Richard raised their hands. Motion passes. All homeowners will be assessed $100 for tomorrow's plowing and the same rate for each subsequent service. Robert stood up. This is insane. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in the current board. You can't do that, Patricia said. Actually, he can, Sharon said quietly, checking her phone. I just looked it up. Any homeowner can call for a no-confidence vote. It requires a 2/3 majority of all homeowners to pass. Patricia's face flushed red. Fine, let him try. This meeting is adjourned. The video ended, but the damage was done. The Facebook group exploded again, with neighbors expressing outrage at the new snow removal fees on top of the existing HOA dues. Several people started researching the process for removing board members. The professional snow removal service showed up on Sunday morning. I watched from my window as a large truck with a commercial plow made its way up Pine Ridge Road. They did a decent job, I had to admit, clearing the road all the way to the top. The driver stopped at my driveway and knocked on my door. You Trevor Bannister? That's me. Lady down the hill paid extra for me to give you a message. She wants you to know that you're being assessed $100 for this service, and if you don't pay, the HOA will place a lien on your property. I thanked him for the message and closed the door. Through my window, I could see smoke rising from my chimney, visible to anyone who cared to look. Another 7 days of fines had just stacked up. The snow removal assessment notice arrived in my mailbox on Monday, along with an updated fine notice. I now owed $4,000 in wood smoke fines, plus $100 for the road plowing I hadn't requested and didn't need. I made copies of everything and scheduled an appointment with a lawyer in Whitefish. His name was Donald Fraser, and he specialized in property law and HOA disputes. Donald was a no-nonsense guy in his 60s who'd practiced law in Montana for over 30 years. He reviewed my documents while I sat in his office, watching the snow fall outside. "This is aggressive, even for an HOA," Donald said finally. $500 a day for wood smoke is excessive, probably unreasonably so. The problem is that you technically agreed to the HOA rules when you purchased the property. I didn't know what I was agreeing to. Unfortunately, that's not a legal defense. Signing documents means you're responsible for knowing what's in them. He leaned back in his chair. That said, we have several potential angles here. First, the fine amount is likely unreasonable and punitive rather than compensatory. HOA fines are supposed to cover actual damages, not punish behavior. There's no way your wood smoke causes $500 of damage per day. What's the second angle? The rules were changed after you purchased the property. There's a clause in Montana HOA law that says major rule changes require reasonable notice and an opportunity for affected homeowners to object. Did you receive notice of the wood smoke rule before it was implemented? I shook my head. First I heard about it was when Patricia showed up at my house. Donald made a note. That's good for us. Third angle is the road situation. If the HOA is going to charge you for services you don't need and didn't request, we can fight that too. But here's the thing, Trevor. Fighting an HOA is expensive and time-consuming. Even if you win, you're looking at months of legal battles and thousands in attorney fees. What's my alternative? Honestly, move. Sell the property and go somewhere without an HOA. I thought about my house, my 5 acres of forest, the view from my porch that stretched across miles of Montana wilderness. That's not acceptable. Then we fight. I'll need a $5,000 retainer to start. I wrote the check, knowing it would drain a significant chunk of my savings. But this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about principle. Donald filed a formal response to the HOA within 3 days, disputing both the wood smoke fines and the snow removal assessment. He argued that the fines were excessive and punitive, that I'd received inadequate notice of the rule changes, and that the HOA was selectively enforcing rules in a discriminatory manner. He also sent a letter to Patricia personally, warning her that continued harassment could result in a countersuit. Patricia's response was to double down. Another fine notice arrived, this time for December 1st through December 7th. Another $3,500. The total was now over $7,000. The Facebook group had become a daily battleground. More neighbors were speaking up about Patricia's leadership, sharing their own stories of excessive fines and arbitrary rule enforcement. Mark Peterson revealed that he'd been fined $300 for having a basketball hoop visible from the road. Jennifer Walsh had been cited for having the wrong color mailbox. Even the Hendersons, who lived in the house closest to the county road, shared their story about being forced to repaint their entire house. A petition started circulating to remove Patricia and the other 3 board members. It needed signatures from 6 of the 8 homeowners to force a special election. Within 2 days, it had 7 signatures. Everyone except Patricia. Patricia responded by calling another emergency meeting, this time to discuss destructive behavior by certain community members. The meeting notice specifically mentioned my name and accused me of organizing a campaign of harassment against lawful HOA leadership. This time, the meeting was held at the community clubhouse, a small building near the entrance of Pine Ridge Road that was technically owned by the HOA. Every homeowner showed up, including me. The atmosphere was tense from the start. Patricia sat at the front table with her 3 bored allies, while the rest of us filled the chairs facing them. It felt less like a community meeting and more like a trial. "This meeting will come to order," Patricia announced, banging her gavel. "We're here to address the petition that has been circulating, which I believe is based on misinformation and personal vendettas." "It's based on your abuse of power," Robert said immediately. "You've turned this HOA into your personal enforcement agency, and we're all tired of it." "The HOA exists to maintain property values and community standards," Linda Wu chimed in. "If people would simply follow the rules, there wouldn't be any issues." "The rules are the issue," Jennifer said. "Nobody cares about half the things you're enforcing. Wood smoke, trash and visibility, these aren't real problems." Sharon Kimball, who'd been quiet, suddenly spoke up. "I'd like to say something." She looked uncomfortable, glancing at Patricia nervously. "I think maybe we have been too aggressive with some of the new regulations. I voted for them because Patricia convinced me they were necessary, but seeing how they've affected people like Trevor, I'm not sure anymore." Patricia turned to Sharon with a look of pure betrayal. "We discussed this. You agreed that strong standards were essential." "I know what I agreed to, but I didn't think we'd be ruining people's lives over it." The meeting devolved from there. Accusations flew back and forth. Richard Dorsey tried to maintain order but failed. Patricia insisted that the wood smoke rule was necessary for health and safety. I pointed out that everyone in Montana burns wood, and our community's air quality was excellent. Mark brought up the excessive fine amounts. Linda tried to defend them by citing HOA bylaws, but Robert pulled up Montana state law on his phone showing that punitive fines had to be reasonable. After 2 hours of heated argument, a vote was called on whether to proceed with a special election to remove the current board. 7 hands went up, including Sharon's. Patricia, Linda, and Richard voted against it, but they were outnumbered. "This is a farce," Patricia said, her face red with anger. "You're all going to regret this. Without proper leadership, this community will fall apart." "It's already falling apart," I said. "You've divided neighbors who used to get along fine. You've created problems where none existed, and you're trying to force me out of my home over wood smoke. That's not leadership, Patricia. That's tyranny." She gathered her papers and stood up. "The special election will be held in 30 days, as required by the bylaws. Until then, the current board remains in power, and all existing fines and assessments remain in effect. You're still on the hook for over $7,000, Mr. Bannister." The election was scheduled for January 15th. In the meantime, winter continued its assault on northern Montana. We got hit with another major storm system, this one dropping 18 inches of snow over 2 days. The professional snow removal service charged another $800, split among the homeowners. Patricia made sure I was assessed my share, even though my driveway didn't need their services. The fine notices kept coming. By Christmas, I owed over $12,000 in wood smoke violations, plus $400 in snow removal assessments. Donald Fraser filed motions with the Montana District Court, arguing that the fines were excessive and requesting an injunction to stop further penalties while the case was being resolved. The court scheduled a hearing for late January. Meanwhile, the campaign for the special election was in full swing. Robert, Mark, and Jennifer formed a slate of alternative candidates, promising to repeal the excessive regulations and return the HOA to its original purpose of basic road maintenance and shared expenses. Patricia and her allies fought back, sending letters to all homeowners warning that removing the current board would lead to chaos and declining property values. The divide in the community became almost comical at times. Patricia refused to speak to anyone who'd signed the petition. Linda Wu stopped responding to neighborhood emails. Richard Dorsey, who seemed to realize he'd backed the wrong horse, tried to play both sides and ended up trusted by neither. Sharon Kimball was the wild card. She'd clearly had a change of heart about Patricia's leadership, but was still technically a board member. She started reaching out to me privately, apologizing for her role in the wood smoke ban. "I didn't think it through," she told me over coffee at a cafe in Whitefish. Patricia made it sound so reasonable. She talked about air quality and health concerns, and I just went along with it. I didn't consider that people actually need to heat their homes. "Why did you go along with her in the first place?" Sharon sighed. "Honestly, because she's forceful and I'm not. She has this way of making you feel stupid if you disagree with her. And at first, some of her ideas seemed okay. Like the trash can thing. I actually did think it looked messy when people left their cans out all week. But then it just kept escalating, and suddenly we're fining people thousands of dollars for normal stuff. Are you going to resign from the board?" "I think so. After the election, regardless of how it turns out. This whole thing has been exhausting." Christmas came and went. I spent it alone in my house, fireplace burning, watching the snow pile up outside. My family was back in Seattle, and I'd chosen not to travel for the holidays given everything that was happening. The legal bills were mounting, and I needed to conserve my resources. On December 28th, something unexpected happened. I received a certified letter from the HOA's law firm. Patricia had hired attorneys, which wasn't surprising, but the letter's contents were shocking. The HOA was filing a lawsuit against me for willful destruction of community property and breach of homeowner obligations. The suit claimed that my refusal to plow the road had damaged the road surface, creating ruts and ice that would be expensive to repair in the spring. They were seeking $25,000 in damages, plus attorney fees. I immediately forwarded the letter to Donald Fraser, who called me that evening. "This is a desperation move," he said. "They're trying to intimidate you into backing down before the election. The claim is nonsense. You have no legal obligation to plow the road, and normal winter weather isn't willful destruction. But they can still drag me through court over it. They can try. I'll file a motion to dismiss, and I'm confident it'll be granted. But Trevor, I have to be honest with you. This is getting expensive. Between defending against their suit and pursuing your own claims about the excessive fines, you're looking at substantial legal costs. Even if you win everything, you might not recover all your attorney fees." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you need to decide how far you're willing to take this. If you want to settle and move on, now might be the time." I looked out my window at the forest, at the land I'd worked so hard to afford, at the house that was supposed to be my retirement dream. I'm not giving Patricia the satisfaction of backing down. We keep fighting. The new year arrived with another snowstorm. January in Montana is typically the coldest month, and 2025 was no exception. Temperatures dropped to 15 below zero, and the wind chill made it feel even worse. My fireplace worked overtime, and I burned through my wood supply faster than anticipated. I spent several days cutting and splitting more firewood, each swing of the axe feeling like a small act of defiance. The special election was held on January 15th at the community clubhouse. All 8 homeowners attended, along with an independent monitor hired to ensure the vote was conducted fairly. The monitor was a representative from a property management company out of Kalispell who dealt with HOA disputes before. Patricia and her allies made their case first. Linda Wu presented a PowerPoint showing statistics about property values in communities with strong HOA enforcement versus those without. Richard Dorsey talked about the importance of maintaining standards. Patricia herself gave an impassioned speech about her vision for Pine Ridge as a premium community. "When I moved here," Patricia said, "I saw potential. Beautiful properties, wonderful views, but no organization, no standards. People were doing whatever they wanted and the community was suffering for it. I've worked tirelessly to implement proper governance, and yes, that means sometimes making difficult decisions, but those decisions are for everyone's benefit." Then it was Robert's turn. He kept it simple. "Look around at this room. 3 years ago, we all got along. We helped each other, had barbecues together, acted like neighbors. Since Patricia took over, we're divided, angry, and threatening each other with lawsuits. Trevor is facing bankruptcy because he heated his house with a fireplace that was there when he bought the property. Mark paid $300 for a basketball hoop. The Hendersons had to repaint their entire house. Is this really what we want our community to be?" The vote was conducted by secret ballot. The question was simple. Should the current HOA board be removed and replaced with new leadership? The result was 6 votes for removal, 2 votes against. Patricia and Linda had voted to keep themselves in power, but everyone else wanted change. A second vote was held immediately to elect new board members. Robert, Mark, and Jennifer were elected, along with Sharon, who'd been nominated by several neighbors who appreciated her willingness to admit she'd been wrong. The 4 of them would form the new board, with Robert as president. Patricia took the loss about as well as you'd expect, which is to say, not well at all. "This is a mockery of proper governance," she said, standing up and gathering her materials. "You're all fools if you think removing standards will help this community. Property values are going to plummet, and you'll have nobody to blame but yourselves." "The meeting is adjourned," Robert said calmly. "The new board will convene next week to discuss rescinding problematic regulations and addressing outstanding fines." Patricia stormed out, with Linda following close behind. Richard Dorsey stayed behind, looking relieved that his involvement in the drama was finally over. The new board's first official meeting was held on January 21st. I attended, along with most of the other homeowners. Robert conducted the meeting with a completely different tone than Patricia's authoritarian approach. Instead of pronouncements, there were discussions. Instead of gavels and parliamentary procedure, there were conversations. "First order of business," Robert said, "the wood smoke ban. I move that we repeal it entirely. It was excessive, poorly justified, and it's caused serious harm to Trevor. All in favor?" 4 hands went up. The motion passed unanimously. Second order of business. All existing fines related to the wood smoke ban are hereby voided. Trevor, you don't owe the HOA anything for heating your house. Relief washed over me. $12,000 in fines gone with a simple vote. Third order of business, Jennifer said. The snow removal situation. Trevor, we owe you an apology. You've been plowing our road for 3 years out of your own pocket, and we took advantage of that. Would you be willing to continue if the HOA compensates you fairly? How fairly are we talking? Mark pulled out a spreadsheet. We looked into what professional services cost. $800 per storm seems excessive, but that's because the company has to drive out from Kalispell. If we paid you $300 per plowing, that would be a huge savings for the community and fair compensation for your time and equipment. I thought about it. $300 per plowing, probably 8 to 10 times per winter. That was decent money and it would help offset my legal bills. I do that. Then it's settled, Robert said. Trevor is our official snow removal contractor. We'll draw up a simple agreement. The meeting continued, methodically reversing Patricia's most egregious rules. The trash can visibility requirement was gone. The approved color list for houses was eliminated. Basketball hoops were fine. Garden gnomes were fine. The HOA would go back to its original purpose, maintaining the shared road and handling basic community needs. Sharon brought up one final point. What about the lawsuit Patricia filed against Trevor? That was HOA money she used to hire those lawyers. Robert's expression darkened. I looked into that. She authorized the legal expenditure without a board vote, which is against our bylaws. Any expense over $5,000 requires board approval. She violated her own rules. Can we withdraw the lawsuit? I asked. We can and we will. I'll contact the attorneys tomorrow and tell them the HOA is dropping the case. Everything seemed to be resolving itself. The oppressive rules were gone, my fines were voided, and the community was coming back together. I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. 2 days after the board meeting, I received a strange call from Donald Fraser. Trevor, did you have any direct communications with Patricia Miller after the election? No, I've been avoiding her. What about threats? Did you threaten her in any way? Of course not. What's this about? Donald paused. Patricia filed a police report claiming you've been harassing her. She says you've made threatening phone calls and that you drove past her house slowly several times in a menacing manner. She's trying to get a restraining order. I felt anger surge through me. That's completely fabricated. I haven't called her or driven past her house. She's making this up. I believe you, but we need to take it seriously. The sheriff's department contacted me because they saw I was your attorney of record in the HOA case. They want to talk to you. The meeting with the sheriff's deputy took place the next day at the substation in Whitefish. Deputy James Morrison was a younger guy, probably early 30s, with the professional demeanor of someone who dealt with plenty of domestic disputes and neighbor conflicts. Mr. Bannister, I appreciate you coming in voluntarily, Morrison said. I need to ask you about Patricia Miller's allegations. They're false, all of them. She claims you've called her phone 6 times in the past week, making vague threats about getting even and making her pay. Check the phone records. I haven't called her. Morrison nodded. We will. She also claims you've been driving past her house at night slowly in what she describes as intimidating behavior. I live at the end of Pine Ridge Road. Her house is the second from the bottom. The only way to get to my house is to drive past hers. But I haven't been driving past at night or doing anything remotely intimidating. Do you have any witnesses or evidence of your whereabouts on the nights she specified? I pulled out my phone and showed him my location history, something I'd turned on years ago for hiking safety. The data showed I'd been home every night. Patricia claimed I'd been harassing her. Morrison reviewed the information carefully. This is helpful. Mr. Bannister, I'm going to be straight with you. This looks like a case of someone trying to weaponize the legal system against a personal enemy. It happens more often than you'd think. Based on what you're showing me, I don't think there's any credible threat here. What about the false police report? Isn't that illegal? It can be, but it's hard to prove. She could claim she was mistaken or that she genuinely felt threatened, even if the facts don't support it. Unless there's clear evidence of intentional false reporting, we usually don't pursue charges. I left the sheriff's office frustrated but relieved. The restraining order request would likely be denied, but the fact that Patricia had tried it at all showed how desperate she'd become. The situation escalated further when I got home and found my mailbox had been vandalized. Someone had spray painted "bully" across it in red letters. My security camera, which I'd installed years ago mainly for wildlife watching, had caught the whole thing. The footage showed a silver Lexus pulling up at 2 in the morning. Patricia Miller got out, spray-painted my mailbox, and drove away. She'd been stupid enough to vandalize my property on camera. I called Deputy Morrison immediately. He came out to review the footage, and his expression shifted from professional neutrality to clear annoyance. "She filed a false police report and then committed vandalism against you. This changes things considerably. What happens now? I'll bring her in for questioning. The vandalism charge is straightforward. The false report is trickier, but combined with this footage, it shows a pattern of harassment on her part, not yours. Mr. Bannister, would you like to press charges?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to just let it go, to move on now that the HOA situation was resolved. But another part of me was tired of being pushed around. Yes, press charges. Patricia was arrested 3 days later. According to the local news, she was charged with vandalism and filing a false police report, both misdemeanors but serious enough to require a court appearance. The story made it into the Whitefish Pilot, the local newspaper, with a headline that read, "HOA dispute leads to criminal charges." The article detailed the conflict, painting Patricia as an overzealous HOA president who'd taken things too far. Several of my neighbors were quoted, talking about her excessive fines and authoritarian leadership style. The story spread quickly through the local community, and Pine Ridge became a cautionary tale about HOA overreach. Linda Wu and Richard Dorsey quietly resigned from the HOA, wanting no part of the continued drama. New members were elected to fill their positions, normal people who just wanted to maintain the road and keep community costs reasonable. Patricia's court date was set for March. In the meantime, she remained in her house, rarely seen. Her husband, the real estate attorney she'd bragged about, filed for divorce. According to neighborhood gossip, he was embarrassed by the whole situation and wanted to distance himself from her behavior. The Montana District Court hearing for my original lawsuit against the HOA was held in late February. Donald Fraser argued that the wood smoke fines had been excessive and punitive, that the rules were implemented without proper notice, and that the HOA had acted in bad faith throughout the dispute. The new board, represented by Robert, actually supported my case, admitting that the previous leadership had overstepped. The judge ruled in my favor on all counts. The wood smoke ban was deemed unenforceable and unreasonable. The fines were voided, which was moot since the new board had already done that, but the legal precedent was important. Most significantly, the judge ordered the HOA to pay my attorney fees, totaling $18,000. HOA boards have authority to create reasonable rules, Judge Martinez said from the bench. But that authority is not unlimited. Fining a homeowner $500 per day for heating their house with a wood-burning fireplace in Montana is not reasonable by any standard. This case represents a clear abuse of HOA power, and I hope it serves as a warning to other associations that might be tempted to similar overreach. Patricia's criminal trial in March was brief. She pleaded no contest to both charges, probably on advice of her attorney, who wanted to avoid a trial where the mailbox video would be shown publicly. She was sentenced to 100 hours of community service and a year of probation. The judge also ordered her to pay restitution for the damaged mailbox and warned her about future contact with me. "Mrs. Miller," the judge said, "your behavior throughout this dispute has been vindictive and escalating. You used your position in the HOA to target Mr. Bannister, and when that didn't work, you turned to vandalism and false accusations. This is unacceptable. If you violate probation or have any further contact with Mr. Bannister outside of normal community interactions, you will face jail time." Patricia said nothing, standing with her head down while her attorney shuffled papers. She looked diminished somehow, smaller than the forceful woman who'd showed up at my house months ago with her folder and ultimatums. Spring came late to northern Montana that year, with snow lingering into early April. I plowed Pine Ridge Road 2 more times before the weather finally broke, collecting $600 from the HOA for my services. The new board was functioning well, handling basic maintenance and keeping costs low. Our monthly HOA fees had been reduced from $300 to $50, covering only essential road maintenance and liability insurance. My relationship with the neighbors improved dramatically. Mark and I started a tradition of Friday night poker games. Jennifer brought me venison from her husband's hunting trip. Robert and I went fishing together when the lakes thawed. The community felt like a community again, not a police state. Patricia put her house on the market in May. According to the listing, she was moving to Arizona to be closer to family. Nobody was sad to see her go. Her house sold quickly to a young couple with 2 kids, people who were excited about the mountain lifestyle and didn't care about trash and visibility. I spent that spring and summer working on my property, building a proper wood storage shed to keep my firewood dry. I also upgraded my plow truck, using some of the money I'd saved from the voided fines. The new plow was more efficient and would make winter maintenance easier. Donald Fraser and I became friends through the whole ordeal. He invited me to his ranch for barbecues, and I helped him fix his fence line. Over beers one evening, he told me that my case had become somewhat famous in Montana legal circles. "You're the HOA guy," he said, laughing. "I've had 3 other clients contact me because of your case. Turns out HOA overreach is a bigger problem than people realize, and your lawsuit set a precedent that's helping others fight back." That felt good, knowing that standing my ground had helped other people in similar situations. The next winter came with its usual Montana fury. The first big storm hit in November, and I was ready. I plowed Pine Ridge Road efficiently, collecting my $300 fee from the HOA. My fireplace burned hot all season, smoke rising from my chimney without complaint or consequence. The house stayed warm, my costs stayed reasonable, and life was good. One February morning, I was outside splitting firewood when I saw a car I didn't recognize coming up the road. It pulled into my driveway, and a woman in her 40s stepped out. She had kind eyes and an uncertain smile. "Trevor Bannister. I'm Helen Garcia. I live over in the Pines development near Kalispell. What can I do for you, Helen? I heard about your situation with your HOA last year. Our development is going through something similar. Our board president is trying to ban Christmas lights, claiming they're tacky and against community standards. A bunch of us want to fight it, but we're not sure how." I set down my axe and gestured toward the house. "Come on in. Let me make some coffee and tell you what I learned." We sat by my fireplace, warmth radiating through the room while I shared my story in detail. I told her about standing firm on principle, about finding good legal representation, about organizing with reasonable neighbors against unreasonable leadership. I gave her Donald Fraser's contact information and encouraged her to document everything. "The most important thing," I said, "is don't let them bully you into submission. HOA boards count on people being too tired or intimidated to fight back. But you have rights, and there are limits to their power. The law is on your side if they're being unreasonable." Helen left with renewed determination and my phone number, promising to keep me updated on how things progressed. After she drove away, I stood on my porch, looking out at the forest and mountains that had become my home. The whole ordeal with Patricia and the HOA had been exhausting, expensive, and stressful. But it had also clarified something important. This was my land, my house, my life. I'd worked hard for it, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away through petty tyranny and excessive rules. Smoke rose from my chimney, a thin white stream that disappeared into the Montana sky. Inside, the fire crackled, keeping everything warm against the February cold. The road was plowed, the neighbors were happy, and the HOA was functioning the way it should have from the beginning. I went back to splitting firewood, each swing of the axe feeling satisfying and purposeful. Winter would last another 2 months at least, maybe 3. I'd need plenty of wood to keep the fire going. And unlike last year, nobody was going to find me for staying warm. Life in Pine Ridge had returned to what it should be. Neighbors helping neighbors, living peacefully in the Montana wilderness, free from the tyranny of rulers drunk on small power. The community was stronger for having weathered the conflict, and I was stronger for having stood my ground. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the snow orange and pink, I carried the last armload of split wood to my shed. Tomorrow would bring more work, more winter, more of the life I'd chosen when I moved here. But tonight, I'd sit by my fireplace, warm and content, knowing that sometimes the fight is worth it, and sometimes standing up to bullies is the most important thing you can do. The wood smoke rule was gone. Patricia Miller was gone. The excessive fines were gone. What remained was a community that had learned an important lesson about governance, power, and the difference between leadership and control. I added another log to the fire and settled into my chair, watching the flames dance. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and steady. By morning, the road would need plowing, and I'd be there to do it, fairly compensated and freely choosing to help my neighbors. That's how communities should work. Not through force and fines, but through mutual respect and cooperation. It had taken a harsh winter and a lot of conflict to get there, but Pine Ridge had finally figured it out. And my chimney, it kept smoking all winter long.